And this time we're going to be talking about economy, one of my favorite subjects. No, I'm not kidding about that. I actually talk about economics quite a bit. A number of years ago, I got into, well, I was part of the Ron Paul revolution. I don't know if any of you remember that. That was fantastic. And at the time, he was talking a lot about economics and why we should be more interested in that. And so that got me reading books. And the more I read, the more I realized I'm just a dork and I like economics. Why did I ever get into cars in the first place? So tonight I want to welcome up to the stage, we have Brett Oland, Shane Wenzel, Bryce Wade, and Ben Perrin. So as I said in the intro, I thought I was a car guy, and I ended up being a total dork. I love economics. I think it's a fun subject, and I read lots of books on it. What's really interesting about it is really the study of relationships between people. That's what I find. I found that economics and monetary policy, all of this stuff, is really just how do people relate with each other? We used to have the barter system. We went with, and there was a lot of problems with the barter system. Some people still engage in it, but as the famous Dr. Walter Block said, you have the double coincidence of wants, where, say you're a pickle-wanting chicken farmer, you're gonna have to find a chicken-wanting pickle farmer, or there's no exchange at all. And so what comes up is the idea of currency, which is a means of exchange. Now, traditionally, throughout history, we've seen it as different things. Salt, even, was the whole
Worth
idea.
your weight in salt.
Worth your weight in salt, right? So that became a currency at one given time because it was really difficult to produce. And then, later on, metals became part of currency. And you still work in metals, and many of you work in that in some capacity. But what we've gotten is something that tends to happen in a mature society or mature empire, perhaps, where they start to fiddle with it. They fiddle with the currency, they fiddle with the money. And what we found ourselves on is a fiat currency that really largely originally was backed by something and now is backed by, well, nothing. It's confidence, right? And the whole idea behind that is confidence. And we all know when somebody scams you, what a person that does that is called, a confidence man, confidence scheme, right? And we see that now. Right now, we have money that's basically funny money. There's memes going around. They just introduced the new Canadian $1 bill, and it's a 20, right? So you guys are all individually into, so I'll start at the end. What brings you here? And just off of this intro, feel free, have at her.
You start with the lowly home builder, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry, what was the question again, Clyde?
Well, it's not really a question. It's an open conversation about monetary policy and the idea of, economics. Where are we now? Obviously, in home building, we've got lots of regulatory issues, but we have right now is a huge problem in home building is how much it costs to even get the materials to build homes.
It amazes me. I've been doing this for 35 years, and I've never seen it as volatile as I have over the last 4 to 5 years. And that really kicked into high gear back in 2020 when we started hitting lockdowns. We weren't sure what was going to happen out of all of that. And what we ended up with was a booming market here in Canada. Well, a booming market across North America, to be honest. I've never seen every market in North America going full steam. So that put a strain on the supply. Of course, you're locked down, so you're behind in your orders. Everything just exploded then. Hence your inflation, hence your backlog, hence your pricing on absolutely everything. It's an interesting time. Of course, I've documented everything I possibly can about it, so in case it happens again, I know what to do. Because this was just blind, the way we had to approach everything. But I think we see some easing in the market now, and thankfully, because the cost of living, well, I mean, I make fun of it. I call it the Canadian peso now, isn't doing much better. You know, we're still where we were the last 2 to 3 years. So, you know, if there's any different options, you know, at least you got 3 more experts up here. So I'm curious what they have to say.
Well, absolutely. A lot of people are curious. Well, they're concerned because, well, what is inflation? Inflation is just the value of your currency dwindling. It's not the price. Prices going up is that's just a symptom of that problem. And you've been helping people with that.
Yeah, so like one of the main things that causes inflation is money printing by the government, right? And you have all of this money flowing into the system where you don't have as much productivity and things happening in an economic way in the economy itself, right? So the more money that you have chasing fewer things, the value or the price of those things goes up. And one of the things that we've really gotten away from since 1971 when the US dollar went off of the gold system is that we're financializing and monetizing things that shouldn't be, right? So like, what is your time valued at, right? If you measured your time in gold 50 years ago, you would actually get paid significantly more and you would be able to buy significantly more things with that money. And so over this time, inflation has been a tax on savings. It's been a tax on what we produce. It's been a tax on how we operate in the economy. And so, yeah, I work in precious metals, obviously, and what we've seen over the last 5 years especially, but even in the last 2 years, is that the price of gold specifically has doubled. That's a very historic thing. Like we're in quite the time in monetary history with all of the different things that are happening.
But forgive me, like gold hasn't really changed its value on what you can purchase with it. You could go to what would the example be? You can go a fine suit and go for dinner, a really fancy dinner on an ounce of gold. You could do that in the Roman times. You could do that in the 1930s with the dollar, and you could do that today. It's the price of the dollar that's really changing, is it not?
Well, that's part of it too. But like I've just a quick example. Like I have a friend that bought a 6x6 military truck for $60,000. He paid for it in 12 ounces of gold. He actually paid $12,000 for that vehicle because he bought it in silver that he traded in for gold that he bought 20 years ago. So like the power of holding something that is a real asset is that it's been made, right? You're buying something now. Like if you bought food 5 years ago, well, how much food did you get for that amount of money? Just look at the price of meat right now. How did that happen? Did the price of a cow to raise a cow increase that much? No, but the value of our money has gone down. And so the way that you protect yourself from that is by holding real assets that have intrinsic and real value.
Now that becomes a difficult thing for most people. It's difficult for people. I mean, if you have savings and you just want to stockpile something, you want to have it in a vault, you want to have it at home. But a lot of people are trying to transact day to day, and they don't want to lose that value. And Brett, that's where you come in. You've come up with a whole idea of facilitating people to be able to have that, almost have their cake and eat it too. You can have value in gold or in precious metals or in other things, but yet still just be able to use your bank.
Yeah, for context, I'm Brett Oland, the CEO of Bow Valley Credit Union. It's sort of lines up very well that I'm sitting beside the gold guy and the Bitcoin guy, because that's exactly what we're trying to do is as an organization. We're trying to put ourselves in people's shoes and recognizing that there's a separation between medium exchange, so actually what you use to buy something, and the actual store of value. And so we're trying to basically create a financial institution where you can seamlessly move between precious metals, fiat, Bitcoin, and fiat, and so you can move seamlessly back and forth, because I think it's going to become more and more important that people think about that store of value, where your hard-earned dollars are going to actually stay at an elevated value. You put in a lot of work and put in your time and effort into saving those dollars, and if it just gets dwindled away in the background, that's not good. That's effectively what we're talking about here, getting your wealth stolen. So being able to sort of transition easily between Bitcoin, gold, silver, and Canadian dollars is becoming more and more important for people to think about.
Now, gold, silver, metals, that's been a valuable source. And it's a really good monetary store because of just some fundamental properties of it. It can't be recreated. It has intrinsic value because of its rarity, but then it's also divisible. You can chop it up, you can split it up, you can make coins with it, you can make bars with it, you can even make little tiny, you can put it in jewelry, you can do all kinds of things with it. So it's valuable because of those things. Now, then comes the new digital era, and we have blockchain and cryptocurrency. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm not super sad. Like I don't know the programming side of it, but what I do understand is that it's the fact that it's not infinitely reproducible that gives it value.
So yes, I'm going to caveat that by saying specifically Bitcoin. Everything outside of Bitcoin, I'm going to kind of paint with broad strokes here, but everything that has come since Bitcoin has in some way been perverted in a way where once it was possible to achieve digital scarcity, to basically try and replicate the qualities of a good sound money like gold, this is what was trying to be done in a digital form for being able to transact cross-border anywhere on the planet. Once that was possible and there was a realization that there could be value in a scarce digital asset, a lot of people said, oh, if they did it once, I want to do it again, but how can I do it and make it proprietary and enrich myself? And so what has come since, which I'm sure many of you have seen so many of the headlines, scams, rug pulls, left, right, and center. You are right. You are 99.9% right. But the original inception of Bitcoin, the first instance of true digital scarcity, to this day remains uncorrupted. No one person controls it. And I personally have actually been living on Bitcoin for 5 years now. I've been teaching people how to use Bitcoin for 10 years through online video tutorials. But other than the fact that nobody else can print it, it's also a bearer asset that you need to actually physically coerce somebody to give up. So we had Give, Send, Go up here talking about the Canadian trucker protest. And I went up to the booth and I said, thank you guys for not bending the knee to the government when they told you to freeze things. But of course, what happens, it gets to the Canadian bank account and frozen.
That's right.
Bitcoin was the only digital donation method that actually successfully made it into the hands of the Canadian truckers. And I set up the donation page for that cause. Now, it didn't go perfectly. There was an individual who was in the process of handing it out in Ottawa that they were able to track him, specifically kick in his door and get the remaining 30%, which sits in an illegal escrow now. But 70% of the funds actually made it into the hands of truckers. So when it comes to sound money, when it comes to these types of things, super important to have money that nobody can print. We can go back to the basics of, a pretty easy blueprint for success. Create value for others, spend less than you earn, and save in a money that nobody else can print. I think all of us on the stage would agree that's a pretty good way of doing things, but also having a bearer asset that you control that nobody else can get their hands on, where they have to physically coerce you to remove it instead of flicking a switch and blanket rug pulling everybody's money. I think all of those qualities are super important. So I love being up here with the gold guys.
That's great. That's great. So I guess we'll go back down the panel again, and I want to ask the question, what do you see for the future of our economy? Where do you see us as a home builder, as what all of you guys are doing? We'll start with home building and where that market is. We saw the single largest, we haven't seen anything like the bubble in real estate, I don't think anywhere in the world like we've seen now. So now things are coming down. What's the sort of thing there? We have largest inventories that we've seen since the 1990s in the major cities. What do you see for the future?
Well, it depends on what market you're in. I mean, in this, in the Alberta market, specifically in Calgary, you're just below what we would consider an average market. In Edmonton, you're still seeing some relatively good activity that's akin to the average market as well. But when you go down east, you go down to Toronto, you could probably make deals on condos there at about 50% of the price they were asking 6 months ago. Vancouver, you could do probably something similar. So they're going to finish out projects. They're going to stop building for a while, and then we're going to play catch up. We go through this cycle quite often, but those municipalities do it more often than not. I don't know why they overbuild all the time, but they do. Maybe it's because it's all the free money they get from the government down there. Oh yeah, okay. But where do I see it going in the future? You're going to see pricing ease off. You're going to come back to a more normal level. I'm not going to bullshit anyone. You're not going to see prices drop by 50% across the country. Even those 50% on new ones, those are going to come up once everything stabilizes a little bit more. So you're probably looking at about a year down the road. And then reality is finally going to kick in. You know, we're going to see more steady growth. But again, I mean, that's coupled with how the federal government manages immigration in this country. If they go over the top again, we're going to see another roller coaster ride, and that's my biggest concern. You know, as it is, you need some stability, and we need some stability for a number of years just to kind of calm the pressure on our trades, on our suppliers, and on the products that we're importing from different countries, unless we come up with more made in Canada solutions. Quick thought there.
No, thank you so much. Where do you see our future?
Well, I think that we're in a very historic time in financial history. There's a lot of change that is happening in a myriad of different ways. The central banks are buying gold at breakneck speed. So just for a point of reference, right? The average amount of gold that a central bank on the whole bought was in the hundreds of tons, typically, and before about 2020. But they've been buying over 1,000 tons per year since. And so we're talking an extreme amount of money. Another quick factoid for people is that the gold market was about $10 trillion in 2020. It's nearly 25 now. So we've seen a massive increase in the amount of gold allocation worldwide. So China is a massive buyer of gold and silver, and they're doing a lot of that buying outside of the typical market. So it's off the books kind of. So we don't actually know how much they have, and they're trying to implement a gold-backed settlement currency to compete with the U.S. dollar. So this is we're talking about massive changes to how our economy functions, and gold, no matter what happens with whatever comes next, I don't want to get too doomy and gloomy here, but no matter what happens, gold and silver are going to be a very important part of it because it has always been a very important part of the economy historically. And I like to look at things more holistically and in a longer time span than what's happening in the next couple of years. How did we get to this point, right? We got to this point because the massive amount of debt that the whole world has been taking on. So if there is a solution to it, one of the few solutions to it is gold and silver. So when I look forward in what's coming in the next couple of years, there's going to be massive changes because they've said we're going to make massive changes. What are those going to be? How are we going to position ourselves? And I think this is the key thing that I think everybody wants to consider. If you look at the trajectory of what's been happening for the last 5 years, and then you put a trajectory in front of us for the next 5 years, where are you positioned now, and where do you want to be at the end of those 5 years? You have to position yourself as much as you possibly can to A, not get wiped out if something bad happens, but also position yourself so that you're going to be able to take advantage of this. And one of the biggest things that historically has been able to do this is hard assets. Because in times of chaos that we're kind of facing now, you want something that's going to be real, that's tangible, and not, an equity in a tech stock where the tech stock could collapse because nobody's using the tech, which we've seen happen in recent years. And so the biggest thing that I see coming down the pipeline is the changes to how the global economy operates, because we have all this geopolitical problems, we have the trade tensions all over the world. So this is going to have a massive effect on our economy itself, and you want to position yourself as much as possible to protect yourself from some of this chaos.
And where do you see the future?
Yeah, just sort of adding on to that, the Western world's in a position called fiscal dominance right now, and that is not just Canada, that's not just the United States, it's the entire Western world. And really what fiscal dominance means is they cannot continue to function without printing currency. So that they've gotten themselves into so much debt in the Western world that if they don't print currency, they have what's called a hard default. And so they opt for what's called a soft default, and where they print the currency and continue to devalue every dollar that came before it. So what does that mean for you as an individual? It means that the governments in the Western world cannot stop printing currency. Otherwise, they will absolutely have political unrest like you've never seen. If you think it's bad now, if they stop printing currency, it's going to get a whole lot worse. But what does that mean? So it means that every dollar that you've earned in the past is going to continue to devalue, and you're going to continue to see this K-shaped economy, which effectively means that people that hold assets are going to do just fine, and people that don't have assets are going to do very poorly and continue to do poorly. So it's not a surprise to me that most of the baby boomer generation is going, what's the problem here? I don't get it. Let's vote for Mark Carney. It's because they have all these assets, they've been positioned very well to see them continue to increase in value. And good for you if you were able to get ahead of that wave. But the generations that are coming after my generation, I'm a Generation X, are having a very hard time getting into housing. They're having a very hard time starting a family. They're having a hard time getting a job that pays meaningfully. And a lot of this is because they continue to print currency.
I think, yes, I thought that was great. Number of points there that I really liked, but I agree that they can't stop printing. I think that we're at a bit of an inflection point right now. I think we're at a huge point of change where people are really starting to question all of our most major institutions, the government itself, the currency. A lot of different huge aspects of our society are now coming under scrutiny. And there was a time where people would kind of laugh off inflation. You'd talk to somebody and they'd say, oh, when I grew up, it was a quarter for a movie ticket or something like that. And that completely, like nowadays, that completely glosses over the scale of theft that has occurred for that to take place, where it used to cost a quarter and now it's $15. And it's not the fault of the movie theater, it's the fault of the money printer. It's the currency has gotten so worthless that it requires so many more units to purchase something. Just as an example, if your bank account reflected the percentage of all of the goods and services available in Canada, and it showed you that as a number, as a percentage number, instead of the number of dollars you own, you would see that number perpetually going down. Even if your nominal amount, the amount of dollars you held there, stayed the same, because there's more and more currency. And the larger percentage is allocated wherever the money printers see fit. They get to decide, we created more money, now we own a larger percentage of all of this stuff. Where are we going to put it? What are we going to subsidize? What are we going to let live? And what are we going to kill by not giving subsidies? And so inflation and money printing is one of the most insidious, hidden taxes that most people don't understand, and it's so important to avoid it at all costs. So as the whole panel has said, get into hard assets. Precious metals are great. Owning your home is great. And I think it's important that people do begin to look at and understand Bitcoin. But I will say that as you're diving into it, I'm not going to tell you to go buy Bitcoin. I'm going to say that your understanding of Bitcoin should reflect your allocation to it. So tread lightly, start small, and just kind of learn how it works and how it might benefit you. But all of these examples here are incredible ways to sidestep inflation.
Yeah, and if I could just tack on a real world example. When I was growing up, when I was 20, 15, 20 years ago, whatever that was now, like when I had to go and buy beer, a six pack was $7, right? So we're talking like $1 something for six pack for each can of beer, right? When I was in high school, one of my teachers, he would used to tell us when he was talking about when he was growing up, he would slap down 50 cents on the table and get 2 beers and leave 10 cents for the waitress. So we're talking like that's like a 30 times increase in the price of beer over whatever that 30 years or whatever that number is. And so we're not really dealing with a 2% inflation like they tell us. The inflation is much higher, and you can see that every time you go to the grocery store, right? The price of things has gone up, but the value of our money has gone down, and that's the big problem.
And they can hide it too, right? The things that you notice the most are the things that you can't bullshit. You go get a T-bone steak, that looks really expensive. You go down the cereal aisle, it looks more expensive, but also you look at the box and what's the most deceptive way they can repackage it and change it? They make the box less deep into the shelf, so you're getting less cereal in the box. You go turn over the jar of peanut butter. Now there's a huge divot in it. If you look at a Toblerone bar, there's actually studies on the Toblerone bar and how many little ridges, how many mountains there were in the chocolate bar and how thick they were has consistently reduced over time. So you get shrinkflation. This isn't, again, the fault of the producer, because if they don't do it, their competitor will. And every shopper that walks through the store will look at the lowest price tag and buy that thing. So your products are getting crappier because the money is getting crappier, and the producers of the products do the only thing that they can do to prevent sticker shock, which is make your products suck more and give you less.
Yeah, and the inflation rate is, it's deceiving. It's not when they say it's 2.5% inflation, that's not year over year. That's not the past decade. That's the last 3 months. And they always measure it that way. Not only that, some people may know this and some others may not. It's a basket of goods. And so it's measured on a basket of goods, but if you change what's in the basket all the time, then it's not a very good measure. And then also, you can't compare apples with apples when you're talking about another country to Canadian inflation as well. They're not the same baskets. They're all different. This is just a normal phenomenon.
Can we touch on that, the basket of goods? Because the way that they measure that is they look at the consumption habits of consumers. The problem with that is if you were buying steak regularly and then you stopped buying steak because it was too expensive and instead you went to ground beef or ramen noodles, they don't interpret that as we're having a set standard of living and we're measuring that inflation. They interpret that as what is the average consumer doing to fill their grocery cart? We're going to sub in those products to accurately reflect the habits of the consumer nowadays. So they do these adjustments without actually capturing the decay in the standard of living. And they also do hedonic, I think it's called hedonic adjustments, where if, say, technology, which moves very quickly and improves very quickly, they'll look at the power of a computer, a laptop, and they'll say, well, this thing got twice as fast. And so we're going to factor that into the pricing and say, well, you got twice as good of a product out of this year, and we're going to, that's like it lowers the inflation rate. But they don't do it the opposite way around, where the quality of your product degrades and they say, ooh, you took a hit there. So it's, again, the whole mechanism is so broken and lean towards favoring low inflation.
Yeah, there's actually a website that you can go to called shadowstats.com that gives a great indication of what the reported inflation is and then the actual inflation of how they calculated it in the 80s. And it's very stark. And usually the actual inflation is about 3 times as much as the reported inflation. And why do they do this? And really what's happened is The government relies on a lot of these inflation numbers because they can really start fudging the books. If they have to give out CPP or old age security or other some sort of benefits, it's in their best interest to actually show that inflation as a much lower level. Even tax brackets, if they show the inflation as a much lower level, they don't have to increase tax brackets, so they can actually increase your taxes more on that. So it's nice that we're on the heels of the farming panel, because it really is the fox guarding the hen house when they're reporting these statistics.
That's really, so the other one, another website or another great place to look for inflation I found was the Big Mac Index. I don't know if you've seen that. So they've measured Big Macs over, because Big Macs have never changed over the past, I don't know, 50 years.
Actually gotten smaller.
They have gotten smaller? Okay, so they have gotten smaller. But the Big Mac Index is a better inflation measure, because you can see the same thing and how it's increased over time. That's a great one. So we are going to have to wrap up. So for interest of keeping it brief, I'd like to get a last word from every one of you. And we'll start, I want to, as we're going out of this, starting with you, Shane, I'd like you to not only just do your last word, but tell everyone what it is that you do and where they can find you in order to see more of this. Because I think a lot of people are going to be very interested in this. Economics is usually one of those ones, oh, here comes the economics thing, snooze. But it's actually quite interesting, and it has a lot to do with your life and everything that you know, the wealth that you've gathered over time. So it would be great for people to be able to find you.
Well, I've tried to keep it as simple as possible. Just on every platform, it's at shanewenzel.com. If you want to know more about the company and what they do, it's at shanehomes.com. So we keep that part of it pretty simple, but you know, honestly, if you have any questions, I'm going to try and stick around as much as I can for the weekend. I'm happy to answer any of them. You know, of course, housing's one big thing, but I think, like a lot of people here, I have an opinion about lots of things. Hopefully, it offends a few of you, and maybe a few of you will really take it to heart. But the good part is that, you know, if we can get along, that's great. I'm looking forward to it. But you know, we come together. We didn't build this world based on being at odds all the time. We built this world. We built Canada, you know, and found compromise along the way. And I'd hope that we get to do that. We would be able to continue to do that, rather than always being at odds. You know, let's keep building this country the way we should, okay?
Well said. Well said. Bryce, final words, and where can people find you?
Yeah, so my name is Bryce Wade. I'm a precious metals broker with New World Precious Metals, and we're one of the exhibitors, so feel free to come and talk to us about any of the stuff that we talked about on the panel today. But I think it's really important to understand that, like I was saying before, there's a lot of change happening, and you're going to want to consider, you know, how am I positioned and how do I protect myself? How do I leave my wealth that I've built up over my life to my family and keep it in my family? And this is one of the things that gold and silver allows you to do, is protect that wealth, and especially right now when we've seen the gains that we have in precious metals, really gives you an opportunity to make gains. And my fellow panelists here really made a good point that it's really important to build the society that we want. And this whole conference is really about that. How are we going to do something? What are we going to do, and how are we going to do it? Silver and gold isn't the only solution, but it is one of the tools that everybody has access to. It's a universal thing, just like crypto, that everybody has access to. And it's how you use the tool that really dictates where we go together. And if we want to build a better place, a better world that we want to live in and leave to our children and the next generations, I think it's really important to have sound money and have money connected to something that's real. And that starts with everybody. If we're able to use and have transactions with it, with each other, I think it's a really important freedom that we have with freedom of transactions. I need to be able to have a transaction with somebody else and have the other person agree, with nobody else getting in between that. And gold and silver has always been a fallback to that purpose, and I think it will continue to be there for a long time. So yeah, thanks for allowing me to be on the panel.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, Bow Valley Credit Union's tried to create products and services that gear towards protecting your wealth, especially in these very inflationary times. We have a couple of products on the metals side. We have an e-metals account where you can actually buy tokenized physical precious metals and seamlessly transition back and forth between Canadian dollars and precious metals. As well as on the Bitcoin side, we have a new product called the Bitcoin Gateway. If you're intimidated by Bitcoin, this might be a very introductory good product for you, where you can actually open up an account where you can buy Bitcoin. It's actual Bitcoin. It's held for you. It's custodial for you. It's insured. You don't have to remember seed phrases, but it's a really good introductory way to get into Bitcoin, and a little bit of Bitcoin will really help with your understanding before you sort of move up to Ben's level of holding Bitcoin. Finally, we have a booth over here. I'm going to try and be here for most of the weekend if anybody wants to chat further. So thank you.
Thank you.
I guess to round it off, I'll just say that I'm really happy to see this event happening here, and kind of this groundswell of positive energy that's coming again at a time where people are really questioning a lot of our major institutions. And I think this is needed to bring people together and to find solutions to the problems like the ones we talked about today. In terms of what I do, again, my name is Perrin. I've been educating people in and around proper security and using Bitcoin to get around governments shutting down bank accounts for a decade now. You can find me really easily online, on YouTube, on X, and on my website. It's called BTC Sessions, and the easiest place is just go to btcsessions.ca. There's a full learn page with step-by-step tutorials that actually take you through what is a wallet, how do I properly secure it, how do I actually send and receive Bitcoin. So all of kind of the basic bare bones stuff in a simple step-by-step laid out way for free in video form. That's it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and if I could just hop in for 1 second, I actually forgot to mention, we're doing a free webinar at the end of the month. So if you've never dealt with precious metals before, we teach people as well. So come to our booth and we can chat about that.
Absolutely. So I want to thank everyone. I want to thank everyone from the panel and everyone for coming today.